If you're struggling to find an ethical manufacturer with low minimums or MOQs, I'm going to overview exactly how you can do that in this video, so let's dive in. My first tip is that you do not have to work with a traditional manufacturer or a full-scale production facility. If this is your first collection, or even if it's your second collection, or if you're in a situation where you're not sure about your inventory or you're doing a pre-sales model, which is actually what we recommend to our clients, then I recommend you use these alternatives that I'm about to overview with you. The thing about these traditional manufacturers is that they might have minimum order quantities or MOQs that they want you to sign up with. And so you might have to sign a contract for a 300 quantity order or a 500 quantity order. And if you're not going to be able to sleep at night, I don't want you to put yourself in that situation because that's going to be unnecessary stress and overwhelm that you're adding to your plate. So instead, there are 3 alternatives I have for you, and the first one is local sewers. So local sewers are essentially literally what it sounds like, sewers in your area. They can sew at home or they can sew at a different facility, but essentially you're going to be working with them one-on-one to create your garments. This is great if you have low inventories or you get one-off orders as you might do in a pre-sales model. With local sewers, the beauty of this as well is you have control over how much you pay them. So you'll know exactly how much you pay them, you can ensure it's an ethical wage, and you also can treat them with care and respect because it's literally just you working with them. So that's the first alternative. The second one is really similar, but it's local seamstresses or tailors. So if there's a seamstress or tailor in your area and you really like their work, you can approach them and see if they would be interested in manufacturing your orders. And you can talk to them about quantities, and again, you will get that control over how much you're paying them. And then last but not least, there are also small production agencies that are local to your area that might employ local sewers or local seamstresses. And the beauty there is that they might have more machines that you might need. They also have more manpower and woman power. So if someone gets sick or someone's on vacation, you have that coverage. So those are 3 alternatives I have for you. And if this is your first collection or you're still in a situation where you're not sure how much inventory you can sell, I highly recommend you look into them. Another reason why too is for traditional manufacturers or bigger scale production facilities, not only will they likely ask you to sign minimum order quantities that they want you to produce with them, the other thing too is that they might have other clients that are bigger accounts than yours, and they're probably going to focus more and give more attention to those accounts. And for you, you still need someone that's really, really passionate about your collection and your pieces and ensure they will be high quality. It's not to say that it won't be high quality, but I really think these alternatives will allow you to get the care and the attention that you deserve at this stage, because it is really crucial when you're first starting out to create high quality products. So I highly encourage you to check out these alternatives. My next tip is to treat this like a numbers game, because that's what it really is. If you're not working with us and we're not warm introing you to our trusted mills and manufacturers, then you really need to do your due diligence. That means spending the time, the effort, and the resources required to get a really big list of people so that you can narrow things down and find the best possible partner for your production. And so it doesn't matter if you're employing a local sewer, a local seamstress, a local production facility, or even a bigger one, you need to do your due diligence regardless and find the best possible person for you. Because your products are so important, you want to make sure they're high quality, they're very intentional, and so that way you can build your reputation as your brand. So do not skip out on this. Do not take the easy road out. It is a numbers game, so treat it as such. It can be very overwhelming, so I do have some tips throughout this process. First of all, you really want to make sure you solidify your product. And if you need help figuring out how to solidify your product and designing it, make sure you watch my previous video where I talked about how to design a clothing line that is very intentional and sustainable. It'll be linked in the cards for you and in the description box. But once you have figured out your product, you then want to start to cast a wide net and ask for referrals, gather information about who you could potentially work with to bring these products to life. And in order to organize everything, I really recommend something like a Google spreadsheet or even an Airtable form. We love Airtable at Recloseted because it's literally like spreadsheets on the next level. You can slice and dice information in different ways, and it's just so great. And so if you want to try Airtable for free, there is a link for you in the description box to do so. But anyways, you can utilize Google Spreadsheets or Airtable, and what you're going to want to do is cast a really wide net so that you can fill up a bunch of different local sewers or seamstresses or production facilities and then you can narrow things down and find the perfect person for you. And in order to find people to populate your list and stay organized, there are 4 ways you can do that. First of all, you're going to be asking your network. This is what it seems. So anyone in the fashion industry you know, or even friends of friends or friends of friends of friends, you want to ask them if they've worked with anyone, if they would recommend them, and really start to get those referrals. And note that even if someone refers someone to you, you still want to do your due diligence. Just make sure that you're comfortable working with them. So the first step is to ask your network. And the second way is to leverage the internet. So you can use Google and really see who you can find and what kind of facilities you can find on there. And then another great place too is on Facebook, using Facebook groups or LinkedIn groups as well. You can let people know what types of products you're looking for and see if they know someone that could help. And then last but not least, my best tip is to leverage sourcing sites. These are almost like job posting sites, but for mills and for manufacturers. So get really specific with what you are producing. And in the posting, talk about what product you're hoping to produce, and also give more information about the technicalities involved so people have an idea, and then talk about the quantities that you're looking to produce as well. And these sourcing sites are great because a lot of the times it is free for brands to post, and it can be really helpful because then mills and manufacturers can actually pitch themselves, and it can be a really great way for you to try to see what is out there. So make sure you do all of that, spend the time to do all of that, and leverage a Google spreadsheet or an Airtable form to really keep track of everything. In terms of your spreadsheet, what types of information you want to be tracking? Well, you want to be tracking, of course, the name of the production facility or the name of the local sewer, the contact person's name if that person is different, their email or their phone number, whatever way you're going to use to contact them. You're going to want to get their website or some sort of brochure so you can have all that information in one place. You also, of course, want to get information about what they specialize in because, they might be doing women ready-to-wear, or maybe they do shoes, like whatever they're specializing in, you want to note that down. You, of course, also want to look into price points so that you have an idea. And if they do have minimums, you want to note that down as well, or if they don't. And then any other information that you could possibly want. And I always recommend to our clients to also have a notes section. So that way if they contact someone and it's not a fit right now, but maybe it's a fit later on down the road, they can just put that in there and you can remember that. So with all of that being said, treat this like a numbers game. You need to put in the work, and it is really, really worthwhile to do so because your products are so important and you really want to find the right fit. If you're getting a lot out of these tips and strategies, I wanted to let you know that we have an amazing free ebook that overviews my signature launch method. And this helps our clients go from idea all the way to successful launch that makes well over $20,000. If you want to snag this 30-page ebook, you can do so at recloseted.com/launch, or the link is in the description as well. Once you've downloaded the ebook, let's dive back into the video. Once you have your thorough list of manufacturers, local sewers, and seamstresses, you then want to narrow it down, and my next tip is to thoroughly vet them. I cannot stress this enough. Once you have your exhaustive list, it's really important to narrow it down, but you need to be very thorough about it. You cannot skip out on this step. You need to do your due diligence, especially if you're not working with us and we're not warm introing you. So make sure you do this because I've heard so many horror stories, like people getting scammed, products coming back and they were completely ripped at the seams. Like, I've heard it all, and I really don't want that to happen to you because production can be one of the most expensive parts of investing in a sustainable fashion brand. So I really don't want that to happen to you. So please thoroughly vet everyone. And so you might be wondering, okay, Selena, I'm going to thoroughly vet them, but how do I do that? Well, what you're going to do is you're going to pick everyone on the list that you think would be the best fit, and you're basically going to interview them or ask them questions. And here are some questions you should ask them. First of all, what do they specialize in? You want to make sure that they can actually produce what you need them to. So, for example, if you want to be producing shoes, then obviously you want to make sure it's a shoe manufacturer. Or if you are producing women's sweaters, then you want to make sure that they have the machinery and the technical expertise to produce the type of sweater you want. So make sure that the expertise is there. And then next, you want to verify quality of work. So ask for people that they've worked with before, ask those people if they would recommend them, that's huge. And then also ask for their portfolio or samples of work too. Because if you're not happy with the level of quality that they're putting out, or you're not happy with something, then that's probably not going to be a good fit for you. Additionally, you want to ask about pricing. So how their pricing works. And then in terms of paying their garment workers, if you're working with a factory and not like a local seamstress or a sewer, then you want to ask them if they're paying by piece or by hour. And so by piece means that, let's say the garment worker finishes their sweater and they get $100, let's say, then that's their payment. Or are they paying the garment worker, like let's say $25 an hour and the sweater will take 4 hours? There's not necessarily a right or a wrong here. It's just knowing how the garment workers are being incentivized and what kind of environment you need to be on the lookout for. Because if they're paying by piece, for example, the garment worker might be more incentivized to try to do as many pieces as possible, and there might be pressure to do things quicker. And on the other hand, though, if they're being paid by hour, the garment worker might feel like they need to work a lot to be able to pay for things. And so there's pros and cons to both, but it's just really being able to know how they're doing that so that you know what to watch out for. The next thing as well is asking about lead times. So how long will it take them to actually make things? How far in advance do they need your tech pack? Really make sure you understand that, both for your planning, but also for their planning, because if you decide to work with them, you want to make sure it's a smooth process. And so you need to be able to meet all their deadlines. You need to know how fast or how slow they're turning things around. And it's fine if it's on the slower side, because we are trying to do a slow fashion brand, but you just want to be aware and know this up front. And you can record everything in your spreadsheet or in your Airtable form so that you can compare and so that you have all that information on file. Additionally, you want to try to see if you can actually visit the facility. So if it's a factory or even if it's the local sewer's place, if they're okay with that, just see the facility and see if you feel like it's a safe working environment. Especially if it's a factory or even if it's a local small production facility, you just want to make sure that the garment workers have enough space to work, for example. If you look at the outlets and the sockets, are those all kosher? Like, there's little things you can look out for and just see if it's a safe working environment. If throughout this entire process something feels off or something feels fishy, I would definitely trust your gut. I know that sometimes it can be hard to explain, but if something just doesn't feel right, I would not ignore that feeling. The other thing as well is if you aren't able to visit a facility in person, you can do it virtually as well. I always recommend to do it in person if you can, but if you can't and they're far away, then virtual works as well. And make sure you schedule these visits in advance. Don't just show up unannounced. I think that, some people do that, but in order to start off on the right foot and on the best foot, you just want to be respectful. And so ask them if you can meet with them in person, see the facility, and then go from there. And then one of the things that you really want to ask as well is ask what happens if they have too much work. So let's say they accept your work and they accept another client's work and another client's work, but they kind of overestimated how much they can handle. A lot of times factories will outsource to other factories, and that is where a lot of things can go awry, because you might have vetted this factory or this garment worker or whatever, but then you have not vetted this other factory. And so if this factory is not paying a living wage or they're not up to standards, but your brand stuff is being produced there without your knowledge, that's not great for you. And so you really need to ask this question and ask them how they deal with that situation, and just ensure that you are comfortable with it. And another thing too is we always tell our clients, if they're in a situation like this, to really get the knowledge from the factory, because sometimes they'll do it and they won't even tell you. So you just want to make it super duper clear that if this situation happens, you need to be informed, you need to be in the know, and that's really important to stress and bring home. And then last but not least, ask if they're comfortable being on your website and your promo material. I always talk about showing the behind the scenes, because that way your community is invested in your journey and they really want to see you succeed. And so ask them if they're okay with maybe some photos of their facility, of their working space, maybe some of the photos of the garment workers actually making the clothes. And if they're not okay with it, it's not really a red flag, but I would just say you always want to ask for consent. And if someone is willing to be shared and you can document those processes, you probably want to go with them, just because it is better from just a traceability and transparency perspective. So definitely ask about that as well. So make sure you do your due diligence, ask these questions, and don't be shy about it, right? Because we want to narrow down who the perfect fit is for your products. And if they're resistant to it or if they're giving you attitude, then it's probably not a right fit for you to work with them anyways. Because if in the sales process they're already being prickly and not being great to deal with, imagine what it's going to be like after you give them money and now you're working with them, right? So you really want to make sure that you are working with the best personable person or the best personable facility possible. And I've already talked about this, but I just want to talk about it again. The fact that trusting your gut is so important here. If something's fishy or something feels off, I would just walk away, make note of it in your spreadsheet or your Airtable form, and look elsewhere. There's a lot of options for you out there. There's local sewers too, local seamstresses, and so don't be in a situation where you feel like something's going on, but you just can't quite put your finger on it. That's just not ideal. So make sure you do your due diligence. I know it's going to be time consuming, but it is so important, especially if you're not working with us, to make sure you're comfortable with who you're going to be working with to produce your garments. Once you have gathered a list of manufacturers and you have vetted them, and you're at the process where you maybe have your top 3, I would then move into my next tip, which would be to get them to make samples. That way you can actually test their quality of work on the garment that you want to produce. And so I would do this with your top 2 to 3 manufacturers, seamstresses, local sewers, and really test them out. And so with the samples, typically it's going to cost about $150 to $300, depending on the complexity of the garment, depending on the material, and all these different factors. So just keep that in mind for your budgeting purposes. The bonus with this as well is that you can start to iterate and finalize your designs, because as you know, sometimes on paper, something will not drape or feel or be comfortable or whatever it is as much as it does in person, because what you're imagining may not actually happen. And so it's really important to get samples, and then you can change things and tweak things. And I talk all about this in my previous video about how to design a clothing line the right way. So make sure you check it out. It's linked in the cards and also in the description box. But I highly recommend you do samples so that you can test these manufacturers, seamstresses, local sewers out, and really essentially interview them. And just note that the first sample you get may not be 100% perfect in regards to the exact way it fits or how it looks. And if it is perfect, then that's amazing and you've knocked it out of the park. But just know that the first sample is likely not the final piece that you're going to end up with in production. There's going to be tweaks you make. But that being said, it's a really good exercise to see how well they make the sample though. So you want to see the sample quality in terms of the seams, how careful they were, how they followed instructions in the tech pack or in the pattern. And you also want to see how they worked with you. That's really key, because when you communicate things to people, you want to make sure that they're listening to you, they're taking it into account. And you also want to make sure too, if you have feedback and you want to make tweaks, see how receptive they are to that, and if they're willing to take a really collaborative approach with you. It is also important to see if people are patient, because if this is your first collection or even if it's your second one, sometimes you need some more time for people to explain things to you, explain why things are done a certain way. So you really want to make sure you partner with someone that's patient, that's kind, and really willing to work with you and get this done. And the thing I want to stress is that if they can't get it right at the sample stage, there's no way things are going to go smoothly during the production phase. And what I mean by that is if you are just asking them to make one garment, but you see the quality is not there, they're not really listening to you, and they're missing feedback, then imagine what's going to happen when you ask them to do 50 quantities, right? Like the chances of mistakes just increase by 50 times. And if they can't even handle doing one quantity, then you want to be really, really careful. And one of our previous clients, this is before we started working together, but she fell in love with this woman-owned facility. It was a small production facility, and it's amazing what she was doing and what she stood for. But for some reason, they internally weren't able to really figure out how to communicate. And so there was a lot of mistakes, and she would give feedback on samples, but a lot of the times only half of it would be done, or some of it would be missing. And so it wasn't a great experience. But my past client decided to go ahead and work with them anyways because she really wanted to support them. And while I think that's amazing, you also need to do what's best for you and your business. So that's something to keep in mind. But anyway, she went ahead. She felt like if she could stay really organized, really make sure that they were on top of things, things could turn out well. And as you can likely tell, some of the pieces came back and the product quality was just not there. There's actually an instance where she shipped out pants, and a lot of the customers were reporting that a lot of the seams were breaking, and it was just such a bad situation to be in. And so really make sure you get folks to do samples, look at the quality, and if it's just not there, then just chalk it up to you not working with them, and maybe you can work with them again in the future if they're really aligned with your values, and maybe they can get some of their internal processes straightened out. But for you, especially for your first collection, you don't need that added stress of something like that. So really make sure you do your due diligence, ask them to make the sample, make sure you're really, really happy with it before you move forward with working with them. And I really just don't want this to happen to you. I really want you to be set up for success. I really want your first collection or even your first few collections to go off really, really smoothly. So please have an exhaustive list of people, vet them, and then get them to make your samples. And be relatively cutthroat about it. If you're not happy with the quality of work, you're not happy with it, and your customers are not going to be happy as well. So make sure you really find someone that you are aligned with. Once you've narrowed down who you're going to work with, my bonus tip is to treat them with respect and act like they're a partner in your business. Because if you think about it, your local seamstress, sewer, or production facility, they're the ones bringing your products to life. This is literally bringing you revenue, and your customers are going to be touching it and wearing it. And so they have such an important function in your business. So treat them with respect and act like it's a really important partnership, because it is. And in order to have a successful working relationship, here are my tips. First of all, you want to be so organized. I do not care if you are not organized normally, but in this situation with this working relationship, you are going to be so on top of it. You're going to know when deadlines are, you're going to know the timelines, you're going to know the work back schedules, you're going to know where all the files are, you're going to know what the status of everything is. You need to be all over this, because this is so important, and you don't want to be the bottleneck or the reason why your production does not turn out the way you want it to. Secondly, you need to communicate. If you don't like something or something's getting delayed, communication is so key. Err on the side of over communicating, not that I think that's actually a thing, but always share and make sure that both parties know exactly what's going on at all times. You also want to make sure everything is documented. It is really important to have things in writing, especially your feedback, so that your partners can actually look at it and reference it, but also so that you have your butt covered. In case anything happens, you have proof that this is what you asked for, and if they deliver something different, then you can then go down that route of trying to fix things, ask for compensation, whatever it may be. And I don't want you to go into this thinking that something like this is going to happen, but you just want to protect yourself. So make sure you document everything. And then additionally, make sure you pay invoices on time. I know that I don't necessarily have to tell you this, but a lot of the times in these types of business models where people have staff to pay for, you just want to make sure that you're respectful of that. So make sure you pay your invoices on time. And then last but not least, just be a very appreciative and great person to work with. I know I likely don't have to tell you this, because as an aspiring slow fashion founder, you're probably an amazing human being already, but just make sure that you are just a joy to work with and someone that they would definitely refer or tell other people about. So act with all these things in mind, and I have no doubt that you will have a very successful working relationship. If you watched until this point, comment, "I'm going to find an ethical production partner," so that we can support you, cheer you on, and you can speak your success into existence. Friendly reminder that we have an amazing free ebook detailing our signature launch method that will help you go from idea all the way to successful launch that makes at minimum $20,000. Download it if you haven't already at www.recloseted.com/launch, and the link will also be down below for you as well. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them on this video, comment below, I will personally get back to you, or you can send us a DM at Recloseted on Instagram, or an email at hello@recloseted.com. Whatever works best for you. Thank you for watching this video. I am so honored to support you on this very incredible entrepreneurial journey, and together, let's transform the harmful fashion industry.